Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 17th November 2016. The first article is related to Jellikattu. You all know that Jellikattu is a domestic animal taming game sport which is played in Tamil Nadu. So it was declared as violative of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. Then Tamil Nadu government has passed a law which is Jellikattu Regulation Act in 2009. According to this act, the people shall not cause any cruelty to the animals. So essentially, this act is not in synchronization with the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So the argument of the government is twofold over here. The first is the taming of animals or else taking care of the domestic animals was a subject in the state list. Then the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act do not apply towards the state subject as it is a central law. And the second is the regulation of the Jellikattu Act. It has already prevented any kind of cruelty to the animals, so it shall be allowed for. And the third argument it brought in is Jellikattu is a sport which is part of the culture and religion. So, in the freedom of religion, it has to be promoted for. These are the arguments made by the state government. But however, Supreme Court has dismissed this and has clearly upheld the stand of the Animal Welfare Board of India, which has said that this taming of animals involves a cruelty and it is also an entertainment to the human. So, the cattle, which are the friends of farmers, are seen as the subordinate beings, and they are being exposed to this cruelty. And finally, Supreme Court did not buy the argument of the Tamil Nadu state government and upheld the ban on Jellikattu. Now coming to Afghan meat, there is Heart of Asia conference which is being held in Amritsar. Last time when it was held in Pakistan, our external affairs minister Ms. Sushma Swaraj made a visit to Pakistan. Now, Mr. Sartaj Aziz, the foreign affairs advisor to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is going to make a visit to India. And coming to the sex selection ads, there is a law which prevents the sex selection, and the sex selection is the reason for female feticide. So, in this context, the female feticide, if it has to be stopped, the sex selection also need to be prevented, and the law has to be strongly implemented. The law again is this is Preconception and Prevention of Selection of Sex Act. So, in this context, Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Prevention or Prohibition of Sex Selection Act. So, what this law says is any of the ultrasound or diagnostic center shall not aid in the selection of the sex of the baby inside the womb of the mother. So, in alignment with this, the Google and Yahoo, these have banned the sex selection ads online. Now coming to the perspective page. So here a sense of only itself. It talks about the middle class in India. So let's understand something about the middle class. So you know that the middle class is a in-between class between the working group and also the entrepreneurial class. So what I can clearly state is the middle class is aspirational and this has origins in Europe. This term by itself has origins in Europe. Now, what the middle class admires for? It admires the bourgeoisie attitude and it is very aspirational. The middle class is also by and large the managerial and professional class. If you see about doctors, lawyers, etc., they majorly flow from middle class. And the middle class is known for its vigor and it builds a civil society in any country. In India, also, the middle class has been strongly developed after globalization. So, it also has brought certain problems along with this. The middle class is very self centric too. It is inward looking and it is concerned about its own self, its own generations, after individual, family, and then its own class, caste, religion. This particular parochial attitude is very strong among the middle class. Now, in India, the middle class activism is fizzling out. Across the world, this middle class activism is known for reforming of the society, improving the educational and income standards in the society. But however, the middle class activism in India is leading to anti-minoritarianism. Now, the right-wing politics, the sense of development which is coming through bourgeois attitude, and added to that, this particular lack of activism on the middle class, these are the reasons for the growth of anti-minoritarianism. And the social media is also playing an important role in this. So, the social media in Indian society today, it is yielding the power disproportionate to its size. We all know that. So, what we need to do, the middle class, it shall be more responsible for a prominent or strong building of Indian society. So it has to make the Indian society inclusive. If the social disorderliness gets in, the worst affected will be the middle class. You know that the middle class activism in our history led to the French Revolution, and also a consolidated opinion of the society need to be nurtured and built through the actions of the middle class. And middle class shall make everything inclusive. It shall strive to build an inclusive society. And next is violence that is not gender neutral. Now, let's talk about equality. There is something called procedural and substantive equality. Bringing equality on paper through the laws, it can bring in procedural and legal equality, but the substantive equality talks about the things which are much wider. What are they? The substantive equality provides for prevention of any discrimination and prejudice against the women, reforming of the institutional structures, providing for political participation and social inclusion. All these things are the part of substantive equality. If we have to bring in substantive equality, we need to show favoritism or affirmative action towards the people who are undermined or who are not having equal space and presentation in the society. So, in this context, the public spaces in India, these are not gender neutral or gender equal. If we want to make them gender equal, we need to empower the women or we need to raise the status of the women. So, it is not through legal equality, but it is through gender sensitivity. So, how the laws have to be in these circumstances? The law has to be sensitive to the gender and gender issues. If we build the gender neutral laws, it is going to worst affect the women who are placed disadvantageously in our society. So, in this context, he talks about Prevention of Domestic Violence Act. What this law says is this: there is section 2Q of this. Any adult male, if he inflicts violence against a woman, either his wife or who is in a relationship with the man, that is, live in relationship, whatever it is, that can be a punishable offense. The case can be booked on adult male along with his relatives. So it means the adult male, if adult male is been registered, along with him, his relatives also can be booked. His relatives alone cannot be booked under this particular act. So, the Supreme Court of India recently said the law has to be gender neutral. So, what it did is this adult male as a word has to be removed. It did in a good spirit of the law. It says that women can be caused violence by the female or else family members of the husband, and they can also be caused violence by the minorities. So that's why adult and the male, both the words are being removed by the Supreme Court. So now, because of this relaxation, the law has become gender neutral, but the same law can be used by women to harass the other women. It means, generally, if you take a family situation, a wife may not be willing to keep a case against the husband, but she is ready to keep the case against the in-laws and other relatives of the husband. So the misuse of the law can become much wider, and it ultimately lead to the suffering of the woman itself. So, till the gender discrimination exists in a society, gender neutral laws are not expected. So, the gender specific laws are the way forward with regard to the protection of the rights of the women in India. That's what this article talks about. Now, a pivot to China. If you take this article, we are building an Asian century. To build this, as Deng Xiaoping has said, the China and India shall be partners. The China has the highest growing or largest economy, and it is the factory of the world, and India is the services capital of the world. A synergy is necessary. But if you talk about the global governance institutions such as World Bank and IMF, and the rules of the globalization, these are framed by this particular Western narrative. So, these rules of the game shall become the Eastern narrative. It means the Asia has to bring in the new rules of global engagement. Then only we can build the Asian century. For this, the cooperation between India and China is very much essential. Now, let's come to the news articles. I have covered the Jellikattu to you and also sex selection ads. But let's talk about the demonetization. So, if you observe, the demonetization is bringing in new troubles to the people. Though intention is good, but implementation is very ill conceived. The practical difficulties should have been well thought and implemented according to a proper plan, which was missing. It appears that it was done in a haste. And coming to the real estate sector is going to be worst hit because of the demonetization drive. Now, in this scenario, let us understand it this way. The government itself has encouraged the difference between a registered value and the market value. You get the bank loans, the mortgage loans on the market value, and the registered value, the person has to pay the stamp duty. Because of this, the registered value, to what extent it was determined, an individual was encouraged to pay the stamp duty. Well above that, the individual is going to pay them in unaccounted money. It means an individual was pushed to pay the unaccounted money in the real estate sector. Now, I have my own experience. I wanted to buy a small house in Delhi. So, I finally have to drop that because the almost 1 crore rupees is expected in unaccounted money. So that's very difficult for a person who is making an honest income to pay back. So whatever be the case, you can expect some 30 to 40% correction with regard to the real estate sector in the large cities, and in the secondary towns it is expected to be much worse than this. Is demonetization is safe in law? So what Mr. Kapil Sibal says, RBI Act will not allow for entire demonetization of the currency. It only allows for demonetization of a series. So all the 500,000 notes are being demonetized. It is not in the good spirit of the law. That is one thing he argues for. And the second thing is that it is what is happening in India is not demonetization per se. It is just the exchange of the currency which is going on. Coming to editorial page, again we have the demonetization. How ill-conceived this move is, it has been explained over here. You know that money is a medium of exchange, and this acts as a medium of exchange, not in the first levels of the supply chain. When you go at the end, that is to the rural level, the money as a medium of exchange gains the greater significance. Now all these supply chains got disrupted. So that's why the person at the end is facing a lot of trouble. And this person is marketing the perishable goods, then his financial difficulties are getting accentuated. And the second thing is, this particular move is also disrupting the consumer demand. If you observe for the last 2 weeks or for the last week, there was no sale of TVs, refrigerators, etc. Then how these showrooms will be paying the salaries to its employees? Can they sustain the business for long? If they fail to sustain the business for long, obviously it leads to unemployment. And the third thing is, the generation of income and the source of income determines the impact of this move. If you observe, if the most of the people, if they are living on remittances, probably this move do not have the impact on, for example, Kerala expats, etc. But the people are living on day-to-day wages. When there is a crunch of liquidity in the market, these people are going to be worst affected. The livelihood concerns can get deepened for the poor and underprivileged because of this demonetization move. And in this context, what could have been done? So, if you carefully observe, the government could have increased the liquidity of the other nodes before it brought in this particular plan. Now, it's repeatedly said by the Prime Minister, the move has to be dealt in secrecy. That's why certain problems have come up. But RBI is one which I have to blame here for. Over years, the high denomination notes are increasing in Indian economy. How come RBI has allowed the same? Now, a poor man, rarest of the rare cases, he does a transaction in 500 rupees note. So it means in India, most of the peoples, especially the chai wallas, everyone, they does the transaction in low cost denominations. So the rise in high cost denomination notes, it was ease for the RBI. So 85% it rose. It means that it showed a greatest disrespect towards the low cost transactions that were happening in India. So, whatever be the case, a move was taken forward and it has to be properly managed for the concern of every one of us now. There is another wind or another route for the rise of the black money is coming up. Because of the ill management, the agricultural income has become a other route for converting the black money into white money. So the government has repeatedly said that it will not tax the 2,50,000 deposits in a bank. So agricultural farmers Jan Dhan Yojana accounts, these have become the alternate routes to convert the black unaccounted money into accounted money. So that's why it has been repeatedly said. India has to tax the agricultural income, but however, the taxation which India does, it can be provided back as subsidies to the farmers. If you are not curtailing the income at the source, ultimately it lead to this particular misuse. That's what is Mr. Balakrishnan spoke about in his previous article. Now, Kashmir, the situation is coming to normalcy. In this context, the state shall avoid the triumphalism. The situation has come to normalcy because of two reasons. The middle class is high and growing in Kashmir. In this context, the future generations and their prospects, business of the people, this drive the important. This become important. And second thing is, no mass movement can sustain for long. So, in this context, whatever the normalcy coming back to Kashmir, it shall not be seen as a victory of the state or triumphalism. And the worst part is Mr. Manohar Parrikar has linked this with the demonetization drive. In a sense that the money is driving the agitations in Kashmir. It is very narrow or shallow understanding of the Kashmiri problem. So what we need to do is we shall be sensitive, especially the state shall be sensitive to the concerns of the Kashmiris, and the humane, people friendly approach can provide for a long lasting solution to the Kashmiri problem. A challenge and an opportunity. Now, with regard to the WOBOR, One Belt One Road Initiative, Maritime Silk Road Initiative of the China, India is almost reluctant to join this. It sees in opposition. With regard to WOR, the China-Pakistan economic corridor was more important, and it passes through Gilgit-Baltistan region of India, which is part of POK. So, India opposes this move, saying that Kashmir is part of its territory. So it means India has sovereign rights over the Gilgit-Baltistan region. So the CPEC, it runs from Kashgar to Gwadar, and recently the first ship made an entry into the Gwadar port. And the $46 billion project has its own risks. One is the economic downturn in China, instability in Balochistan region of Pakistan, and also instability in Xinjiang province, unrest in Xinjiang province. This can halt the progress of this particular project. But whatever be the case, almost all our neighbors in South Asia, they are looking way forward to enter into this project. Probably India also has to take a review of its stand. That's what the author talks about. Added to this, this project is being supported by AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It has been said that the Trump, the new president-elect of United States of America, has a very positive opinion about AIIB. If US joins AIIB, then it is best, or it is in the India's interest to move forward with WOBOR. That's what this article talks about. So these are the articles for today. Thank you very much and all the best.